You ever notice how people love a simple villain? It makes life easier, cleaner. Someone has to be the bitter mother-in-law. Someone has to be the insecure older woman who just can't let go. And apparently, that someone was me. The first time she said it, it was at a Sunday brunch. Crystal glasses, linen napkins, my dining room. The same house I bought 32 years ago when my son was still afraid of thunderstorms. She laughed, light, effortless, charming. "Oh, I think she's just jealous of our marriage." Everyone chuckled, and I smiled. Because I've learned something about power. The loudest person in the room usually understands the least. Her name is Ava. She's beautiful in that polished, Instagram-perfect way. Soft voice, sharp instincts. Knows exactly how to tilt her head when she wants sympathy. My son Daniel adores her. Or maybe adores isn't the right word. He clings to her. And that should have been the first red flag. But mothers aren't allowed to say things like that. We're supposed to let go, to trust, to be gracious. So when she started telling friends I was territorial, when she hinted that I had trouble accepting their happiness, I said nothing, because jealousy wasn't the problem. Fear was. Daniel was not always the golden boy she thinks he is. People see his tailored suits, his confident smile, his six-figure consulting job downtown. They don't see what I saw growing up. The lies. Small at first, then bigger, then dangerous. He once convinced his high school girlfriend that she had imagined a fight. Made her apologize for something he said. I remember watching it happen in my kitchen. The way his voice softened, the way he reframed reality. I should have stopped it then. Instead, I told myself, he's young, he'll grow out of it. He didn't. Ava thinks I don't like her, that I resent her place beside my son. What she doesn't know is that I see the pattern, the subtle isolation, the way she stopped seeing her college friends as much, the way she checks Daniel's face before she answers a question, the way he finishes her sentences and corrects them. At dinner parties, he'll squeeze her knee under the table. It looks affectionate. It isn't. It's a signal. And I've seen that signal before. The night she accused me publicly, really accused me, was at their anniversary party. 2 years married, a rented rooftop in downtown Chicago, string lights, champagne towers, that curated happiness. She raised a glass and said, "Even though some people thought we wouldn't last, we proved them wrong." Then she looked directly at me. The room shifted. Daniel laughed it off, wrapped an arm around her waist. But her eyes stayed on mine, challenging. And in that moment, I realized something. She doesn't hate me. She's afraid of me. Because somewhere, deep down, she knows I see through him. You want the truth? I did try to warn her. Not dramatically, not hysterically, just once. I asked her if Daniel ever made her doubt herself. She stiffened, then smiled that same polished smile. "Of course not. He makes me better." That sentence chilled me, because that's exactly what his first girlfriend used to say. So yes, when she told everyone I was jealous, I let her. Because it's easier to hate a jealous woman than to confront the possibility that your husband manipulates you. And I made a decision that night. If she wouldn't believe me, I would protect her another way.
even if it meant becoming the villain in her story. You don't spot manipulation in grand gestures. You spot it in the pauses, the recalibrations. The way someone rewrites a conversation you know you just had. 3 months after that anniversary party, Ava stopped coming over as much. At first, she blamed work, then migraines, then just being busy. Daniel,
of course, had an explanation ready every time. Mom, you know how demanding her firm is. Mom, you worry too much. Mom, not everything is a red flag. That last one lingered. Not everything is a red flag, but some things absolutely are. The first real crack showed up on a Tuesday afternoon. Ava called me, not texted, called. Her voice was steady, too steady. Can I ask you something and you promise not to overreact? That's when you know someone's already bracing for impact. She asked me if Daniel had ever exaggerated stories. I chose my words carefully. Yes. Silence. Then she laughed it off. He told me I agreed to cancel a trip to New York. I don't remember that conversation at all. There it was, small, harmless on the surface, but I recognized the pattern immediately. Memory distortion. Step 1. You have to understand something about Daniel. He doesn't explode. He edits. He trims reality until it fits the narrative he prefers. If you resist, he doesn't argue. He looks disappointed. And somehow, that feels worse. Ava started apologizing more. I noticed it at dinner one night. She dropped a fork. Sorry. She mispronounced a wine label. Sorry. Daniel corrected the date of a story she was telling. She smiled. Right, sorry. That word was becoming muscle memory. Then came the financial shift. Subtle, strategic. Daniel suggested they merge accounts to simplify taxes. He offered to manage the investments because, as he put it, I'm just better with numbers. Ava is a corporate attorney, but she let him. That wasn't love. That was conditioning. I did something that night I hadn't done in years. I pulled out old files, documents, emails, a leather-bound folder labeled Daniel, 2011, his college disciplinary report. He'd convinced a professor that a plagiarism accusation was retaliation, turned the entire department against her. It was brilliant, terrifying, and eerily familiar. 2 weeks later, Ava showed up at my house unannounced. No makeup, no curated smile. She looked tired. Can I stay here for a few hours? She asked. Of course she could. She sat at my kitchen island, the same one Daniel used to do homework at, and stared at nothing. Then she whispered, Do you ever feel like you're losing your grip on reality? I didn't answer immediately, because once you validate that feeling, you can't take it back. Yes, I said finally, and it's usually because someone wants you to. Her eyes flickered. Fear, recognition, resistance. All couples fight, she said quickly. I'm probably just stressed. That's the thing about intelligent women. They can argue themselves out of the truth faster than anyone. Later that evening, Daniel called her. I watched her face change in real time. Concern, defensiveness, guilt. No, I'm not at your mom's. Pause. I mean, I stopped by, just for a second. She looked at me when she said it, and for the first time, I saw shame. Not because she was lying, but because she felt like she had to. After she left, Daniel texted me, You need to stop interfering in my marriage.
interfering.
Such a clean word. As if protecting someone from drowning is interfering with their swim. I typed 3 responses, deleted all of them. Because this wasn't about confrontation. It was about timing. A week later, Ava's best friend unfollowed her on social media. Then another. Then her sister canceled Thanksgiving plans. Coincidence? Not likely. Daniel has a talent. He plants seeds. Tiny, harmless-sounding concerns. She's been under a lot of stress. She misremembers things sometimes. I'm worried about her. And just like that, the narrative shifts. She's unstable. He's supportive. It's textbook. The breaking point came quietly. Ava sent me a screenshot, a bank notification. Their joint savings account had been moved into a temporary holding structure. Only Daniel had access. Her text said, "Is this normal?" No, it wasn't. And suddenly, jealousy was the least of her concerns. That night, I opened a safety deposit box Daniel didn't know I still had. Inside it were copies, old emails, recorded voicemails, a private investigator's preliminary notes from years ago when I almost confronted him the first time. I never used them because I thought motherhood meant unconditional loyalty. I was wrong. Motherhood sometimes means choosing the person your child is hurting over the child himself. And if Ava was finally starting to see the cracks, then it was time to decide, expose him or outplay him. Manipulation doesn't feel like a cage. It feels like fog. You don't realize you're trapped. You just realize you can't see clearly anymore. By December, Ava had stopped questioning Daniel out loud. That was the most dangerous phase. Because when someone stops arguing, it doesn't mean they agree. It means they're adapting. She started documenting. I didn't tell her to. She figured that part out herself. Screenshots, bank statements, calendar inconsistencies, voice memos recorded when Daniel thought she was asleep. Smart girl. But Daniel is smarter, and that's what terrified me. One Friday night, he invited me to dinner, just the 2 of us. That had never happened before. We sat at a steakhouse downtown, dim lighting, expensive wine, the kind of place where power conversations happen quietly. He smiled the entire time. "Mom," he said, cutting into his filet, "you've always underestimated me." Not accused, not angry, amused. I kept my voice steady. "About what?" He leaned back. "You think I don't notice the little talks, the visits, the concern?" There it was. He knew. "I'm her mother-in-law," I said. "Concern is part of the job description." He chuckled. "No, interference is." The air shifted, and then he said something that made my blood run cold. "She's not as stable as you think." He said it casually, like an observation about the weather. That was the moment I understood the scope. He wasn't just manipulating her. He was building a narrative, slowly, carefully, strategically. He'd started suggesting she was overwhelmed at work, that she had anxiety, that she sometimes imagined tone, planting doubt in friends, colleagues, even her own sister. So when the financial discrepancies surfaced, when the emotional fractures widened, he would already have witnesses ready to say, "We were worried about her." It was elegant, monstrous, brilliant. 3 days later, Ava found something he didn't expect her to find. A life insurance policy. On her. Recently updated. Primary beneficiary, Daniel. Amount, $3 million. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She came straight to me. And for the first time, she didn't look confused. She looked awake. "Why would he increase it?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer immediately, because there are truths you introduce slowly. "Control," I said finally. Now let me be clear. I don't believe Daniel would physically harm her. He's too careful for something that obvious. But financial suffocation, emotional destabilization, a legal competency argument, that's cleaner, harder to trace. And if he could prove she was mentally deteriorating, he could gain power of attorney, full financial control. Everything would look responsible. That's when Ava showed me the voice recording. It was from 2 nights prior. Daniel's voice, low and calm. "You've been forgetting things lately. That's not normal, Ava." Her voice trembling. "I'm not forgetting. You're just telling me I am." Pause, then him. That's exactly what someone who's forgetting would say. Silence, then a soft, almost affectionate, "I'll take care of you." That sentence wasn't romantic, it was ownership. Here's the twist no one saw coming. Daniel had been preparing this strategy for years, but so had I. After his college incident, I hired a private investigator. Quietly, discreetly. I never stopped. I have records of his financial manipulations, former girlfriends willing to testify, emails where he rehearsed arguments before having them, psychological profiling notes suggesting narcissistic coercive control tendencies. I didn't expose him back then because I thought he would mature. I was wrong, but I wasn't unprepared. The real shift happened on Christmas Eve. Family gathered, laughter, music, wine flowing. Daniel made a toast. "To clarity," he said, glancing at Ava. It sounded harmless, but she caught it. I saw it in her eyes. She stood up before I could, and instead of confronting him, she did something smarter. She smiled. "I actually have a toast too," she said sweetly, "to transparency." And then she looked directly at him. "I think in the new year, we should let a third party review our finances, just to make sure everything's clean." The room froze. Daniel didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened just slightly. He raised his glass. "Of course," he said, but his eyes shifted to me. And in that glance, there was no warmth, no denial, just calculation. He knew the board was changing. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Just one line. "You really think you can outmaneuver me?" No signature needed. For the first time in decades, my son wasn't playing defense. He was playing war. And this wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was about survival. The most dangerous attack isn't physical. It's legal. 3 weeks after Christmas, Daniel made his move. It arrived in the mail, a thick envelope from a private psychiatric evaluation firm. Voluntary cognitive assessment request, signed by Daniel, suggested by him, framed as concern. Ava stared at the document like it was written in another language. "He says it's just to clear the air," she whispered. Of course he did, because if she refused, it would look suspicious. If she agreed, he would control the narrative. Brilliant positioning. Here's what most people don't understand about competency evaluations. They aren't about truth. They're about patterns. And Daniel had been building one. Emails describing her confusion. Text threads where he gently corrected her misremembering. Friends who had already heard whispers of her stress. If a clinician walked in cold, the groundwork was already laid, and Daniel would play the calm, devoted husband flawlessly. But this is where he miscalculated. He forgot who raised him. You don't survive 30 years in corporate litigation by being sentimental. You survive by documenting everything. The night Ava received that envelope, we didn't panic. We prepared. First move, independent counsel. Not a friend, not a referral, a shark. A woman named Rebecca Lawson, the kind of attorney who doesn't blink during silence. We didn't tell Daniel. Not yet. Second move, forensic accountant. Because if Daniel wanted scrutiny, we'd give him scrutiny, full spectrum. Then came the pivot. Ava agreed to the evaluation, but not his evaluator, ours. Neutral, court-recognized, reputable. When Daniel realized he wouldn't control the psychiatrist, something shifted. He didn't argue. He adjusted. That's what predators do. They adapt. The real escalation happened on a Thursday morning. Ava's firm called her into HR. Apparently, Daniel had reached out privately, expressed concern about her mental well-being, framed it as protective, responsible. Her employer was now monitoring the situation. That wasn't a coincidence. That was containment. If he could destabilize her professionally, he could reinforce the instability narrative. He was tightening the perimeter. That night, Ava didn't cry. She got angry. And anger is clarity's older sister. I want to see everything, she said. So I opened the safety deposit box. Every report, every archived email, every statement from women who had dated Daniel before her. One of them, Elise, had filed a restraining order in 2014, withdrawn 2 months later. Why? Because Daniel convinced mutual friends she was having a breakdown. History doesn't repeat, it refines. Ava read everything in silence. When she finished, she didn't look broken. She looked precise. Why didn't you expose him years ago? Fair question. Because I believed love could correct what therapy hadn't. Because I thought accountability would come from maturity. Because mothers lie to themselves longer than anyone else. But not anymore. Then Daniel made his biggest mistake. He got impatient. He transferred a substantial portion of their shared investment portfolio into a holding company. Sole manager, him. He did it quickly, too quickly, and the forensic accountant caught it. Paper trails don't gaslight. Numbers don't forget conversations. We didn't confront him. That would have been emotional. We did something worse. We filed. Emergency motion to freeze marital assets pending financial review. Daniel was served at his office, in front of colleagues. Control thrives in private. Exposure suffocates it. He came to my house that night, not angry, not yelling, cold. You picked her over me, he said. No theatrics, just fact. I didn't soften. I picked the truth. For the first time in his life, he didn't have a counter. Because this wasn't psychological, it was documented. Then he said something I didn't expect. You think she's safe with you? There it was, not a threat, a warning. Because Daniel's final weapon was never money, it was narrative. If he couldn't control Ava, he would try to destroy credibility entirely. And he had one last card left, one that involved me. Something from years ago, something I thought was buried. When he left, my phone buzzed, an email draft from Daniel, addressed to multiple family members. Subject line, important information about Mom, attachment included. I didn't open it. I already knew. This was no longer about Ava's sanity. It was about mine. Daniel's email hit inboxes at 9:02 a.m. Strategic timing. Early enough to ruin a workday, late enough to ensure people were awake to read it. Subject line, the pattern didn't start with Ava. Attached were scanned therapy notes, mine, from 23 years ago, after Daniel's father died. The notes described controlling tendencies, difficulty relinquishing authority, fear of abandonment manifesting as over-involvement. He didn't fabricate them. That's what made it brilliant. He reframed them. By noon, 3 relatives had called, concerned, careful, curious. Daniel didn't accuse me of being unstable. He implied it. He suggested that I had a history of projecting my fears onto Daniel's relationships, that perhaps my interference in his marriage was a repetition of an old psychological wound. He positioned himself as the long-suffering son of an overbearing mother. It was elegant, infuriating, and technically not entirely false. I did struggle after my husband died. I did overcompensate. I did tighten my grip on the only family I had left. Daniel wasn't lying. He was curating. And the most dangerous lies are the ones built from truth. Ava called me that afternoon. Not panicked, measured. He's trying to discredit you before the asset hearing, she said. Exactly. If he could paint me as unstable, my testimony would weaken, my credibility would fracture, and suddenly the narrative would reset. Jealous mother, confused wife, devoted husband. Case closed. But Daniel forgot something. Therapy notes cut both ways, because those same records also documented something else, repeatedly. Concerns about Daniel's behavior as a teenager, manipulation, charm without empathy, emotional rehearsal. My therapist had written, "Client expresses fear that son exhibits early coercive patterns." Daniel only attached the pages about me. He assumed I wouldn't release the rest. He assumed maternal shame would keep me quiet. He underestimated how much guilt I'd already buried. The hearing arrived faster than expected. Asset freeze review, preliminary competency discussion. Daniel walked in composed, perfect suit, controlled posture, soft voice. Ava sat beside Rebecca, our attorney, calm, centered, and I sat behind them, not as a victim, as evidence. When Daniel's counsel subtly introduced my documented instability, Rebecca didn't object. She waited. Then she requested full therapeutic records be entered into context, not excerpts, complete files. Daniel's expression shifted for the first time in months, just slightly, because once context enters the room, control leaves it. The judge read, silence stretched, then came the pivot. Rebecca introduced financial transfer documentation, forensic analysis of the holding company, communication records suggesting strategic isolation, and finally, Elise, the former girlfriend, willing to testify this time, not hysterical, not vengeful, clinical. Consistent, pattern-based. Daniel's narrative began to crack, not explosively, incrementally, which is far worse. Then the judge asked Ava a direct question. "Do you feel mentally compromised?" She didn't hesitate. "No, I feel strategically destabilized." That phrasing mattered because instability is internal. Destabilization is inflicted. The court ordered continued asset freeze, independent psychological evaluations for both parties, not just Ava, both. Daniel's jaw tightened. For the first time in his life, he wasn't controlling the frame. But here's the part you didn't expect. After the hearing, I didn't celebrate, because Daniel looked at me in the hallway with something I hadn't seen since he was a child. Not anger, not arrogance, fear, real fear. And beneath it, recognition. He knew I finally saw him clearly, not as my son, not as a monster, but as a man shaped by years of unchecked brilliance and unchallenged manipulation. And somewhere in that hallway, I realized something uncomfortable. He learned strategy from watching me survive. He learned composure from watching me litigate. He learned control from watching me manage chaos after his father died. He refined it, weaponized it. But the blueprint, some of it was mine. That was the inheritance. Not money, not property, pattern. Ava filed for divorce 2 months later. No public explosion, no dramatic accusations, just documentation, precision, distance. Daniel attempted negotiation, then intimidation, then charm. None of it worked. Because once someone sees the fog, it never looks mystical again. He still texts me occasionally, short, neutral messages, no emotion, no apology, just distance. I don't know if he'll ever change. That's no longer my assignment. What I do know is this. Jealousy was the easiest story to believe. It's simple, petty, predictable. But the truth was heavier. I wasn't jealous of her marriage. I was afraid of the man inside it. And in protecting her, I finally stopped protecting him. If you've ever been painted as the villain for telling an uncomfortable truth, remember this. Silence is sometimes strategy. Documentation is power. And love, real love, doesn't protect someone from consequences. It protects others from them.